What's the value in filming practice? Because sometimes, and especially of late, I wonder if we're getting it wrong. If maybe we're filming the wrong event. If we're really trying to maximize what we're doing from a development standpoint. What's the value in filming practice?
Well, in this case, like when I'm filming the coach, so I'm not filming necessarily all the things that are going to happen on the ice. If it's connected to something that the coach is doing, maybe it's feedback or maybe it's something that he just pointed out, uh, just to give evidence if those things really are happening on the ice inside the practice, what he just said, then I might film what's going on with the players. But it's more or less filming the coach, the interactions, the way that they ask questions, or do they ask questions, or is it just giving clear directions that you got to do this, you got to do this. So, um, so the coach is in the focus at that point. And I think one of the things that in hockey world uh, we can be a lot better is that how we coach the coaches, um, and more in a way that not just telling the things that we feel that is right or I did it this way, this works. But yeah, but it worked for you in that setup, in that time, with that team. Um, so it's more important to have those good questions and have the coaches reflect on what they did and what they can do better, because that's the route to getting the coaches better and getting the game better and getting the coaching better. So you're not just repeating old mantras and stuff that you've been doing. So how can we work in a way that we can improve the game, improve the coaching? And same goes with the coaches. Like, are you just coaching the kids what you know or how you played, or
Yeah,
do you want the players to get better and be better than you ever were? Because I think that's the goal of coaching. How you can coach in a way that you get your players to be a lot better in the game and at the game that you never were, and come up with solutions faster, better than you ever did. So now your coaching can't be just telling. So now it has to be a lot of asking. You're asking smart questions, making the players understand what's going on in the game, and so that's, for me, I think that's one of the biggest things that we can work, or we have to work a little bit better at.
can you connect a dot? And just as you say it, it makes so much sense. But can you connect a dot from, as soon as you start asking players questions about, I'm assuming the play, the drill, the tactic, that the absorption goes up on the player's behalf. That as soon as you start putting it back on them, that their comprehension of the subject matter increases.
Of course, because the only way that you're gonna, as a coach, like the only way that you're gonna make sure that you know that the players are thinking what you want them to think is to make them talk. Because I've yet not met a person or a player who can talk something and not think about it, right? So getting those smart questions across, making them reflect, in a short period of time. A lot of time, coaches think that when I'm start asking questions, it's going to take a lot of time. So it's easier, it's faster if I just give direct answers or direct guidance. But learning, it's a process. It takes time. Do you want the quick fix in a drill where the player does it right in that drill? Was it? It might be a little bit of a setup situation. It might be a little bit of a close drill. You you tell him directions. The drill looks good, but when you put that player in a game in a similar type of situations, which is not identical, it might be similar, but now the play,
Never will be. Yeah,
yeah. So the play is
yeah.
always broken. So now the player can't adapt to that situation because it's been just directive and you just put the player there. So how do you coach in a way where you ask questions? Okay, this is the setup. We're in a defensive zone breakout. What are we going, like? What are we looking at? What's the thing? Like what's the goal here? Okay, so what's your role in it? Okay, what you did right now. Okay, you did this. What can you do better or differently? Player answers this. Okay, now go and do it. So I'm not giving the answer, but I'm directing the player to look at certain problem and then letting the player go inside to the drill and find out the answer so that he can really get to understand why he is doing certain stuff and what works and what doesn't work. Um,
So if and I might actually steal this because I've got to later today I've got to write an email to our coaches site members, just kind of a recap of 2022. But based on the conversations on this podcast, based on the talks that we had at our conference last year, I would say that the coaching theme of 2022 was let players solve problems. And that seems to kind of be the shift. And part and parcel with that, Bob Mancini, for example, from USA Hockey did a presentation at our conference, and it was that you have to get comfortable with chaos. Brock Sheehan, who coached the Chicago Steel, did um, a talk on coaching minor hockey or how we would coach minor hockey, and a whole host of others. But the general theme was, as coaches, we're kind of wired. We want it to look perfect. And so as soon as it's not perfect, we blow it down and we tell them what to do, exactly what to do. And we're not content until we see that with our own eyes. And I sense that we're seeing maybe a shift in coaching on how we approach this, and that there's a real value when it comes to development if we let players not only solve problems, but we get comfortable with it being a little messy along the way.
yeah, and at the same time, we have to remember it's not black and white. So it's not like control versus chaos. So there's a lot of gray area in the between, and there's a lot of stages. So uh, a lot of times I see coaches like really trying to figure out the chaos, and they see as yeah that's a good thing, but they drop too younger, like a little bit too young kids, or just starting to play in too big of a chaos. Uh,
Got it.
so you have to kind of understand like where they're at, but in any way, every time figure out like what is the element of perception and decision making, whatever you do. So it can be a small thing, even though that the kid like they need to decide like from which side of the coin that they're going to go to. That's it. That is already like a perception and decision making over there. So kind of think about it that way. And actually, talking with chaos and kind of get used to it and not wanting like other coaches like not wanting everything to look perfect. But think about
Yeah.
practice. If we want to get better at something, um, if I've used this in my coaching clinics a couple of times. So if you go and ask from a coach, if they come into the coach's room after the practice and they are like, "That was a good practice. That was a really good practice." What happens? Like, what's been going on in the practice? Normally, what do you think? Like, if a coach comes like, "It's a really good practice. That was really like the best of the season." What is going
Oh
on?
man. Probably like a lot of just flow drills.
Yeah, and it went how it was planned. Passes
Yeah,
were
got it.
crisp,
Yeah.
tape to tape.
Yeah.
Players were successful. It went the way it was planned. There were no errors, nothing there, right?
And probably a very familiar environment for the players,
Yeah,
I would
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then think about the goal of our practice is to learn something new. And if you want to learn something new, you want to push yourself to the limit. Like the challenge should be a little bit harder than where your skills are. Not all the time, but you have to kind of play with that boundary of where's the challenge and what are your skills. So that's a practice. That's a development from practice. So now you're learning something. So, but when you're practicing there where the challenge is a little bit harder that your skills are, it's not going to look pretty all the time. Not every repetition is going to be pure and like look nice to the stance. So there's going to be a lot of mistakes,
Yeah.
and that's where we want to be. If we want to Like, you're not going to get a whole lot stronger if you're just squatting 20 years with a 20 kilogram barbell doing 3 sets of six repetitions. You're putting more
Yeah.
weight. You're putting more repetitions. So that's how development happens. So
One of the most important things to anyone, especially competitive athletes, is feedback. No one wants to hear a great game all the time. They want to know why they played well or why they didn't. And Power Player is a very good platform for this because it encapsulates many of the areas of the performance spectrum. Now, a player might have gone pointless in a game, but a coach can watch that player's shifts and then say to that player, hey, you scored 4 goals, you were on the ice for 3, and you made a really good play that helped us get into a scoring situation, and that is really important for our team. A player who played hard and smart in a game might not show up on the scoreboard, but the analytics folks might think he was the best player in that game, and we need to make sure that we can assess those areas of a player's game and provide that feedback to him or her. Practice is also an area where coaches can generate a lot of dialogue with players. How you practice is how you play, and many good youth hockey coaches have found a way to film practice, review it, and give feedback regarding work ethic, execution, and compete level. Power Player has metrics for all of this, as well as a great area for using video, which to me is the best teaching tool we have and which I utilized a ton on this platform. Power Player allows coaches to reach a greater number of players on a larger number of topics in a way that today's young athlete needs and understands.